All right, Goliath. What do we know about Goliath? He's big. Something else. Where's he from? Goliath of, anybody remember? Gath. Not ridiculously important. Not for what we're going to talk about. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 17, if you want to turn over there. I have a few verses. We're not going to read the entire chapter. It's only, it probably takes about 10 minutes, and I don't want to give the time to that. So we're going to read the first 3 verses together. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes Damdim, something. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah and drew up the line of battle against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side with a valley in between them. So we have this scene painted. You got 2 mountains, and you have a valley in between. What we're going to look at is a couple different words here, the names in particular. Has anybody ever looked up what these names mean? There's got to be a couple hands in here somewhere. Nothing? Nobody? Not even a pinky finger? Okay, so I'm kind of nerdy, I guess, and I was always curious as to what these mean, especially after listening to a couple different podcasts and reading a couple things on Goliath. So if you look back to Hebrew, what I did here was basically take an interlinear study and then give you the English version of that. So we look at where they're camped, right? The Philistines are encamped between Soko, which means bushy. It has also some roots in a thorny type, bushy wilderness type area. Hedge, yes, hedge. Okay, and Azekah, dug over. So again, this idea of kind of tilled land or something along the lines of a worked ground. The other place is the edge of blood. Okay, so they are camped between bushy, dug over at the edge of blood. Okay, so this is telling us something about this story, but before we're ever introduced to Goliath, this is the setting, right? This is telling us something about this character before we ever meet them. Verse 2, and Saul encamped in the valley of Elah. Now, Elah is the terebinth tree, which is kind of like an oak. So again, you have the Philistines camped by the bushy, dug over edge of blood, and the Israelites encamped by the oak on 2 different mountains. Okay? Keep going. Verse 4, and there came out of the camp of Philistine a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, and had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield bearer went before him. So again, we're going to highlight a couple things in these verses, okay? The word champion in English is, let me back up, I guess. We're going to look at these words, champion in particular, bronze, this coat of mail, bronze. There's a whole lot of bronze here. Champion, whenever you kind of, again, go back to Hebrew and see what that kind of phrase is translated into. We translate it as the word champion just because that kind of fits. But what they're saying is this man of the in-between. So this is literally the man of the in-between. And this fits both his character and what he's doing, right? So now we have, again, 2 mountains. You got Israel camped on one and the Philistines camped on the other. The champion goes in between them, the man of the in-between, and is calling out for battle, okay? Armor of bronze. This one is just straight up the Hebrew word just in English letters, okay? So, nechosheh. And I'm not going to pretend like I speak Hebrew. Don't ask me to. This is it. That's about as far as I'm going to get, okay? This will become important in a few minutes. Coat of mail. This is where it starts to get really interesting, and we're starting to kind of draw all these themes together. So in verse 5, we talk about Goliath's coat of mail. Now, this is two Hebrew words that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce up there in like the third row of that table. They are literally mean the armor of scales. So Goliath is a giant covered in bronze armor of scales. Okay? Everybody follow me so far? Is this confusing to anybody? All right, no, nothing. We'll keep going. In verse 38, if you skip down to verse 38, it talks about David taking on Saul's coat of mail. Again, I'm just going to try and give you a little bit of evidence for why this is. That same phrase in our English, coat of mail, is just one word, and it's just armor. Okay, so there's not like every time we call out armor, we call it out as an armor of scales. No, it's specifically an armor of scales for Goliath. Again, here's our picture. Philistines, one mountain. They're on the bushy, dug over edge of blood. You have Goliath, the man of the in-between, in bronze scales. And you have Israel encamped near the oak. Can anybody see what I'm trying to draw out of here? Anybody want to take a guess? Anybody want to take a guess? Just throw something at me. Anything. On the oak side, sure. Why? Doesn't sound very appealing, does it? Sure. Sure. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. They tipped the scales literally with this character. Okay, I'm going to keep drawing this out. Sorry. We're going to skip on down to verse 48, okay? We're not going to read all of this. What I really want you to pull from verse 48 and 50, David has killed Goliath at this point, or is killing Goliath, put his hand to his bag and took out a stone, struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. Okay, then in verse, skip down to, 51? Philistine took out, David ran over and stood over the Philistine, took out his sword, drew it, and killed him and cut off his head with it. Okay, so again, you have this Goliath fell on his face to the ground, and then David cut off his head. Okay? Can anybody think of a time when we think of a scaly something being on the ground with their head cut off? Snake, yes. Who said that? Yeah. Where? Genesis chapter 3. I'll put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Right? So where I'm trying to draw this, where we're trying to build, Goliath is the snake in this story. Okay? So if you think about the snake as the tempter of Eve, in the story of David and Goliath, Goliath is the snake, right? He is the tempter. He is the trying to lie to David. He's trying to lie to Israel. And anybody want to expand on this just a little bit for me? What? All right, let me just ask the question. What, in your opinion, does it mean to be the snake? We're 10 minutes in. We got 25 more minutes to go. This is where we need the class participation. Okay? I've led you to the water. Now, let's have a discussion. Okay? What does it mean to be compared to the snake? For a character to be compared to the snake? Evil, yes. The antagonist, yeah. God's enemy. What else? Deceptor, yeah. Deceptive, deceptor, yeah. tempter. Yeah. Yeah. He's boisterous. He's loud. We didn't read over that. We had to kind of skip all that. Maybe we should have read it for time, but anybody else? Absolutely. Right. Yep. Ooh, how so? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. David overcome. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. 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 In the Genesis. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Arrogance is certainly very apparent in Goliath, right? It comes out and calls every day across this valley, terrifying this entire army. What else does it mean to be a snake? What else does it mean? This is a character study. We're supposed to study Goliath in terms of what is his character, who is he, but then also how are we like that or how should we not be like You should be drawing on all of these themes right up to this point, right? We're well into the King's, or we're, I guess, really at the kind of the beginning of the King's period here, and we've got a lot of imagery of the snake in the garden, the snakes in the wilderness, physical imagery, and then there's other kind of metaphorical imagery throughout there as well. Okay, so if I have to say, what does it mean to be the snake? And I do, at being the teacher. I'd say God creates order, right? So if you look at Genesis 1, 2, especially 1 and 2, God is creating order. That's what he's doing. He's taking nothing, he's taking chaos, he's hovering over the chaos waters, and he is making order, right? That is kind of the imagery that is used in those narratives of God separating things and putting them in their place and then filling them with appropriate things and saying, this goes here, this goes here, this is all here. Everything is ordered and it is good. It is very good. The snake is kind of the antagonist of that. He is the unordering. He is trying to descend all of this order back into chaos. Okay? That is kind of where the themes that I'm pulling from. You may have any comments there. Again, we're 18 minutes in. That's his character, yeah. Yeah. His arrogance, I think, to Will's point, his arrogance causes him to say, like, God created this thing and I'm going to destroy it. Yes. Sure. Pretty blatant. Yeah. Interesting thought. Oh, I don't have an answer to that. Ooh, not really that we're told, right? I mean, you could maybe make the case that he has the courage to stand up for his people. That could maybe, you could maybe argue that, because that would take some courage, some bravery to be willing to do that, put yourself on the line for your people. But the very act of him stepping out into the valley and says, I defy the God of Israel. I think it's the quote that's actually in 1 Samuel, I defy the God of Israel. Like that is clearly coming from the wrong place. Yeah, unrepentant. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think, Matt and I have had this discussion somewhat recently about we love taking the evil character and making them just complicated. So they're actually a good person who just has been dealt a bad hand or has been forced into make these decisions, or they're misunderstood, and they're actually a okay person. They've just done bad things. Uh, I'm kind of waiting for the one for Hitler. Haven't really seen that one yet. You know what I mean? Like, that's a joke. Hope nobody takes that. Like, my sarcasm is just the same as my voice. I'm sorry. Uh, but evil sometimes is just evil, right? Like, Goliath is really just painted as he's an evil guy. He's defying God. And that characteristic alone means he needs to be defeated. Any expansion on those thoughts? Yes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Like the battle's already won. Right. But does that mean on a micro level that you win every battle? You know what I mean? And that for me is harder to remember. Yeah. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Yes. Yeah. Tremble. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Anybody else? I'll stand here in silence. I'll do it. Yes. Yeah. You did. Yeah. I just certainly don't want to go fight Goliath, right? And I guess my kind of broader question about what does it mean to be the snake or be aligned with the snake or the tempter or the deceiver, like in our own lives, do we sometimes intentionally or unintentionally align ourselves with that? Where we either don't have the courage to do what we should, or we stand by and watch something wrong or evil happen and we don't do anything, even if it's in like a micro kind of way. Somebody's mean to somebody at work, you see somebody at school do something, make an inappropriate joke. Have we ever participated? Like that kind of, to me, it's convicting on like the micro level to say, yes, Goliath is this large, menacing person, but that has to then apply to every single decision. I know I certainly fall short. Yes. No. No. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Certainly changes its attack, right? We're all carrying around a slab of glass in our pockets that I'm sure has given Satan so many different avenues to attack you on the micro way. Yeah, no, absolutely. Sure. No, I understand. And then roll that into like the concept that grace covers all, right? It's not like how far can I meet till I can get to the minimum of grace. Grace meets you all the way back at zero. So like it's the whole I need to do what's right because it's right. Like I know that point's not super clear. Any other thoughts here? Yes. Mhm. Mhm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Works every day. Anybody else? Okay. We kind of already hit on some of this. Where else do we hear references to the snake? We talked about Genesis. I want to talk a little bit more about what Steve brought up in terms of Numbers, where you get the fiery serpent. Before we get to that, I think we need to look back at Saul just a little bit, right? Like no study of Goliath is super complete without looking a little bit at Saul. So Saul, right? What do we know about Saul? He's also tall. He's also strong. He has already defeated a snake king. Okay, so if you turn to 1 Samuel chapter 11, 1 Samuel chapter 11, it's in verse 1. Soon Nahash the Ammonite came up and laid siege. All the men of Jabesh said to him, make a treaty with us, and we will serve you. So Saul ultimately defeats Nahash, but guess what Nahash means? It means snake. Okay? So you have the bronze, and this is why I kind of brought up bronze earlier. So Nehoshe and Nahash are very similar words in Hebrew, and again, I'm butchering the pronunciation, so don't don't fault the language for me. Like they're so close to each other that they can be used kind of as this word play. We're kind of almost instructed to do that because of the Numbers 21. Okay? So this is where you get the fiery serpent. Moses made this bronze serpent. Again, Nehash, Nehoshe, serpent of bronze. And then, again, the interesting note, you have the serpent bit. Again, just this word play that we kind of miss out on in English. I'm not saying it's required for us to know, but I do find it kind of interesting personally. That this word play is going on throughout the entire Old Testament. And in English, we just get, well, the serpent of bronze, and he had bronze armor. Anyway, the bronze serpent brings up an interesting aspect to the serpent character. Okay, so we've talked a lot about how the serpent is the deceiver, how he's the tempter, how he is trying to break God's order, break up the order of creation and turn it back into chaos. But here we have a bronze serpent being the means of salvation. Okay, so this is, the people were bit by these fiery serpents, and all they had to do was turn and look at this bronze serpent on a stick. Why does this make sense? Or how can this make sense? How can you have the image used in two different places for two very different things? And I know I'm kind of springing that on you. And maybe you don't have like a super quick answer. Anybody got any guesses? Yeah. Into an idol, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So he's saying, like, I don't know if you all heard him, the symbol itself is not evil, right? Like, it is kind of hijacked for evil purposes, essentially. And God can do whatever he wants with whatever he created. He created it. Anybody else? It's the faith. Yeah. Yeah. The faith piece of it is the important piece. We're getting there. Go on. Go on. No, go ahead. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah. What were you going to say, Will? No, I'm sorry, Scott. So yes, this does set up, this is the verse preceding probably the most famous verse in the entire Bible. Okay? So if you read John chapter 3, verse 13, no one has ascended into heaven except he who has descended from heaven, the Son of Man. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. Okay? So directly preceding for God so loved the world is a comparison of Jesus to the bronze serpent in the wilderness. Okay? So when I think about this, I'll tell you the only conclusion I've come up with. We got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to need some discussion. Okay? The only conclusion I can come up with. We have to look to the serpent for the faith piece, right? Jesus being the serpent here, and believe in what he says. We have to believe that God will save us. We have to believe in the grace we've been given. But we also have to confront the death that is. The serpent, I think, does represent chaos and death, ultimately, in kind of every instance, whether that's in the garden, through Goliath. I think, honestly, as Jesus, it represents death. Because you have to confront your death be buried, and rise again to be a new person. And that's the only way that's how I have connected. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody or if that sounds totally crazy. But again, we have 10 minutes. So I would love for somebody to argue with me or to send me off on a tangent. Ooh, I don't know if I could go that far. I don't know that David was fighting Jesus. Like, I can't. Yeah. 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 I mean, and I don't have it in here, but like even in our modern culture, doctors in here. We still use the snake wrapped around. Is it wrapped around the pole? I forget what it is. Yeah, as a symbol of healing. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Install. Okay. I was like really racking my brain there for a second. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. 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 We have to confront our sin and look at it. I think that's the most important piece. Confront it and look at it. Yeah. So I'm going to try and wrap all this up. Goliath is, I think, figuratively the serpent in the story of David and Goliath. Right? David is challenged to battle the serpent just as Adam and Eve were, but David is successful in his battle over Goliath. But I think when we look at Goliath, we can kind of expand on this idea of Satan or the serpent or the tempter. Say he's very arrogant, he's very boisterous, he's very defiant, just all the different adjectives that come along with I will defy God. And we have to, for me, I have to then look at my actions and my attitudes and make sure that I'm not being Goliath. I'm not being too arrogant about whatever the thing that I'm good at is. If I know that I can do this thing at work, I should do that humbly, know that I can do it, but I shouldn't be arrogant about my ability. Or if I have a certain level of friendship with someone, if I have a certain whatever, I should not be arrogant in those things. That, to me, is the lesson that I kind of took. With that, we got probably 30 seconds. If anybody wants to have the last word. I think you should be confident in your ability. Nothing else? All right, we're done.